Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Finish Strong and Start Smarter, automation strategies for a more efficient, compliant, and employee-centric 2026. Thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here, especially among end-of-year craziness. I'll kick things off by sharing a few housekeeping items to get us going. Please use the Q&A feature on the right side of the screen to submit questions. We'll do our best to answer some as we go, and there will be dedicated Q&A time at the end of today's session as well for follow-up. We will also launch a couple of polls during today's session, which can also be found on the right-hand side of the screen. And lastly, today's session will be recorded, so you can expect a link to the recording in a follow-up email. Okay, Rival is the AI-powered talent suite built for modern HR teams. From its first touch to full potential, our modular suite of products helps you find the best people, launch them faster, and support their development through employee lifecycle. So needless to say, automation is a topic that is very near and dear to our hearts today. My name is Blair Brando. I'm the VP of Delivery, Customer Success, and Support here at Rival. I am passionate about supporting our customers with technology that's really actually lightening your workloads and elevating your people. Today, I'm also joined by two valued Rival customers. First up, joining me is Christina Stevens. She's a Senior Manager of HRIS and Analytics at Anderson Tax. She has over 20 years of experience in HR technology strategy, data governance, workflow design, and workforce analytics. Anderson Tax has been a Rival customer for 9 years, and they use our workflow product as well as our integration services. So Christina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you. Next up is Drew Burns. He is lead HRIS analyst at Southland Industries. Drew has over 14 years experience driving HR technology strategy and process optimization. Southland's been a Rival customer for 16 years, and they use all 4 of our products: Recruit, Workflow, Learn, and Perform. Drew, also thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive right in and talk about why we're here today, why automation, why now. So current HR challenges. December means closing the books on compliance tasks, renewals, New Year prep, all while HR is managing PTO, open enrollment, performance cycles. HR teams are stretched thin. Manual processes, disconnected tools, repetitive tasks, fragmented workflows can slow things down. A common story we hear: the HRIS or HCSM system promises an end-to-end, but it stops short of automating some of the nuanced cross-functional workflows like multi-location onboarding, hybrid offboarding, compliance that differentiates state by state. So these are areas that we hear quite often. Going into 2026 with manual workflows means continued inefficiency, higher compliance risk, lost money, and other reactive HR operations. Let's look at a few stats to really illustrate what HR is feeling. According to PwC, HR professionals spend around 40% of their time in administrative tasks instead of strategic work. We look at Ernst & Young, where they're estimating an average cost of a single point of data entry to be $4.78. Gartner found only 24% of HR leaders believe they're getting maximum value from HR tech. Equifax, they're saying 50% of HR professionals report one of their top challenges is using technology to automate workflows. 83% of HR professionals see room for improvement in their organization's onboarding process. We want to ensure you get the most out of today's session, so we want to hear from you by taking a poll. Which workflows are you currently managing manually is the poll we're taking. Onboarding and preboarding, offboarding and exit management, performance reviews and feedback cycles, compliance and policy acknowledgements, training and certification tracking, employee data updates, and record management. So very interested in seeing what the feedback is here. Let's give it a moment and we'll see. Just a few votes as they're coming in. And Drew and Christina, as we see these coming in, we'd love to get your initial reactions to where we're seeing the audience telling us what they're currently managing manually.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that more people aren't doing offboarding manually. But I'm not surprised by others. Training and certification tracking, things like that. That makes sense. Compliance policy acknowledgement, right? That can be scary to track manually.
Yeah, I think, onboarding, I'm a bit surprised that there's, a high number of votes there, just because there's a very high potential for automation there in that space. Also interesting, employee data updates and record management. I think that's another area where if your organization is scaling, finding ways to provide some automation there can be a huge lift.
Definitely agree. Yeah, very interesting to see where the distribution is. I hear both points. Some of the onboarding plus pre-boarding as a combination. Maybe it's one, not the other. But yeah, when you get into the compliance, which are difficult, Christina, to your point, to track, and then record keeping, Drew, I agree. A lot of value in integrating to a record solution to house for compliance purposes. Great stuff. Okay, let's keep going and talk about benefits of workflow automation. Why is it important to reduce that manual workload and implement HR automation technology right now? Well, with budgets tightening and talent expectations rising, automation is maybe the single most important lever and most effective lever when you're talking about doing more with less. Core benefits of automation, going across time savings, automating repetitive admin tasks, those approvals, notifications, certainly data entry, reclaim hours of strategic initiatives. The seamless employee experience, build frictionless processes that ensure every employee gets a consistent on-brand compliant experience from day one. And the cost reduction, automation helps teams scale without adding headcount and minimizes costly errors from manual entry. In the reduced compliance risk, every step is logged, consistent and traceable, no misforms, no outdated policies. And then we're talking about future-proofing. Automation ensures HR can adapt faster to regulation or policy changes without processing manually, I should say. So let's bring it back to current experience for a second with another one of our polls. This one I'd really love to know information on from our users and customers and attendees. But how many hours per day do you spend on manual administrative tasks? Less than an hour, 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3, or is it 3 and above? Let's see as you get some responses. And Christina and Drew, we can see what we think of some of where it's leaning. But based on the stats we showed earlier from PwC, Equifax, and so forth, not necessarily surprised by where this is coming in.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. That's that 2-3 hours, 3 or more hours, not surprising nowadays. A lot of the reasons why we are creating so many different workflows in Rival is to keep reducing it, to minimize as much as possible. Got to be efficient with the work that's coming in, and spending 3 or more hours a day that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's almost half of a work day, right? That you're spending on administrative tasks. And in our, profession in HR, I mean, I'm working on the system side, but, my goal is to enable our professionals to focus on the strategic work and try to reduce that administrative burden. So, I think that's a continued focus area for all of us.
As you said, Drew, almost half the day at the 2 to 3 hours. And we could be even being humble or not even thinking through some of the things that are administrative that can be automated. A lot of time we think of automation as the data entry, but when so the examples could be sending notifications, pushing emails. These are things, filling out a form that I'm passing to the next person. These are areas of automation that can really be captured, grabbed, and explored with us to put into a platform, because you guys are saying such truth in terms of the time spent what the business are expecting back in terms of using for strategic purposes. Yeah, very insightful, very insightful. So before we go into a discussion, just to reiterate, automation isn't just about efficiency and time savings. It's about handling complexity and the high impact workflows that the HRIS possibly can't. Workflow automation tools like Rival can reduce complexity, ensure compliance, and streamline employee experiences across critical areas like the recruiting, onboarding and pre-boarding, offboarding, as we mentioned before, performance review and feedback cycles, as we saw in the polls earlier, along with compliance and policy acknowledgements, your training and certification tracking, and employee updates and record management. All can be captured through automation. It's about taking busy work off HR's plate so you can all focus on why you became HR practitioners in the first place, building meaningful connections with employees and supporting their development across the life cycle. So I'm going to stop the sharing so we can really get into discussion, Drew and Christina, and get into some of the areas where your expertise can really shine through. Christina, I'd love to start with you, and we'll do some back and forth, Christina and Drew, although let's play on each other's expertise as well. And some of these questions are also intended for both. But let me start, Christina. What are some examples of workflows your HRIS couldn't handle that automation ultimately solved by working with Rival?
Oh, we have quite a few of those, and it's ever growing, to be honest. Our HRS does do a strong job, right, of managing employee data, but you're right, it's not designed to coordinate complex people-driven workflows, especially ones that involve multiple stakeholders. Where automation, I think, has made the most meaningful impact for us is across onboarding and offboarding. Offboarding is a good example. Historically, offboarding relied heavily on email and manual tracking, which obviously creates risk and consistency, especially when managing different types of separations. With Rival handling the task with our offboarding workflow, we've been able to standardize how separations are handled. We have better visibility into the process, and we've significantly reduced our reliance on emails. On the onboarding side, we build tailored workflows, not just for regular onboarding, but we have onboarding for new firms when they come aboard. For intern onboarding, these experiences obviously would look different from regular hires, and automation has allowed us to intentionally design the steps, timing, and communication rather than forcing them into the standard employee onboarding process. We have other workflows that are in progress. We are working on the leave of absence workflow. It's still in progress, but automation is already helping us think more intentionally about ownership, sequencing, and governance in an area that traditionally, right, was very manual and compliance driven. We have other things going on. We're also designing workflows to support internal transitions, including transfers, as well as a dedicated managing director retirement offboarding workflow. They're works in progress, but they reflect how automation brings structure and clarity without removing the discretion and personal attention, right, that these situations matter. So I think in all of our automation, automation supports the experience. It does not define it. So we're letting our HR people be HR people and taking care of the back end.
Awesome. So amazing. The transactions you're looking to expand into. I love hearing it. And Joe, I know you're big on the data side, but anything in terms of what Christina was talking about in terms of the automation levers they're pulling that are worth commenting on?
I think that, we're not doing nearly as much as they're trying to do with workflows, but I think Christina did a great job presenting the potential that a system like Rival Workflow, enables. And that's if you have a system that can drive condition-based workflows and use that flexibly and in a way that's easy to administer, then you have a high potential for automating a lot of workflow processes. I know that on our side, we're currently in the process of trying to automate our offer letter generation, and we're close to the finish line on that, and we think it's going to bring us a big lift. So definitely identify with some of the things Christina was talking about.
Are there ways you're using insights to identify areas for improvement now across the candidate lifecycle? You mentioned the offer. Are there other areas that you're inspecting based on the insights you're gathering?
Yeah, we try to keep it simple. I would recommend, I'll probably say this several times throughout, but looking at transactional data, right? And it can be something as simple as like your number of hires, right? Identifying your high volume processes, and usually those are a good place to start. And once you identify those processes, taking a, kind of like double clicking and going a little deeper, talking to the people on the ground to validate your assumptions about that process, maybe create some sort of workflow chart to identify what's actually happening, and then you have a really good starting point to identify gaps and figure out where it makes sense to drive some automation. Another side of it is surveys, right? I mean, obviously, survey data can be extremely beneficial. You got to take it a little bit with a grain of salt, but if you see a consistent pattern, then that's a good way to identify an area of improvement.
Yeah, I want to go a little further on that because Southland really is dealing with volume at scale. So you mentioned using surveys, for example. You guys have hired over 500 employees this year, and then 200 plus onboarding related tasks per hire. What sort of there's a lot of compliance heavy steps in this as well. So what other ways of automation have you layered in to help manage the requirements that you're looking to manage at scale?
Yeah, I mean, we're scaling pretty quickly. I think that for us, especially we're looking at the onboarding process, and the automation helps employees get the information they need faster at the right times in the process, right? Because we have kind of like timing triggers, and they don't necessarily need to rely on an HR professional to get the information they need to get going quickly. And that's not to say that we don't have a human touch, because we don't want it to seem like they're communicating with a robot, right? But at the same time, it is helpful that they have a little bit more of a self-service way to get information as they're coming on board without relying on necessarily a human to get them that information. So I think it's really, it's about striking a balance between automation and the human element, right? Which is kind of the theme we're seeing nowadays with AI anyway, like the human in the loop conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Christina, tagging onto that a bit. So you mentioned differentiation. I know that you have at Anderson, your hires go between FTEs and interns. So how is automation helping to tailor those experiences differently?
Yeah, like you said, we onboard different populations, including regular employees, interns, and newly joining firms. So a single workflow just wouldn't, the same workflow would not work for all of those groups. Using Rival, we created separate onboarding events for these groups. We're able to design different workflows based on the type of hire, allowing us to tailor the task, the messaging, timing specific to that experience rather than forcing everyone through that process. If you think about interns, right, they're temporary, their employment is shorter, and many of their tasks need to be completed closer to their start date. And when I say onboarding, I mean, I also include pre-boarding. Our onboarding experience in Rival starts up to 30 days before they're hired and goes all the way through to their 6-month check-in once they've been employed. For interns, they're not going to have, like most of them aren't going to have a 6-month check-in. Interns aren't usually employed that long. So automation allows us to adjust the timing of the task communication. So the interns receive what they need when they need it without overwhelming them or create extra work for HR. To support those workflows, we do have integrations in place too, like from our recruiting system into Rival, from Rival into our HRIS system. So there's no manual entry like from one system to the next. And that allows us to help maintain data accuracy, and we're still able to tailor those onboarding experiences for all those groups.
How about automation of reminders? Does that prove effective as well? Or is that a
oh my goodness. That is the most annoying yet most wonderful feature of Rival. And everyone will tell you that, right? You may get annoyed by the reminders, but they also help you to do your job on time and check your tasks off. Like you got everything. They've been especially helpful for our interns because their employment is temporary, right? And shorter. For early career hires, the value is slightly different. The workflow helps pace information and the reminders in a structured way, so they're not overwhelmed and can focus on understanding the firm programs, systems, and expectations. So the reminders really support both education and engagement, and ensures also at the same time, right, that the forms are completed, the compliance is done, and all the steps are completed on time.
That's funny. You trying to know what I was getting at. Really, notifications there they are the best and often can be they serve their purpose. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
Awesome. So, Drew, this is for you because I want to ask about that Southland has all 4 rival products, and with that, can you talk about how you are approaching building workflows that span the multiple products and get insights across?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is about the integrations, right? So you want to make sure you understand your source data well and how that's going to play into each of the different modules, right? Because the data does operate differently depending on which module you're in. So you want to understand how your integrations are working, how they're sending things downstream. Once you understand that, you can kind of connect the dots between the platforms, whether you're running reports out of one platform and matching it up to another, whether you're kind of triggering certain tasks that are alluding to a process in a different platform. Just making sure that you have consistency across them so that the employee experience is as consistent as possible. And then, another really helpful thing is just making sure you have reliable administrators for each of the modules, right? Making sure your people are well trained. And I'm very lucky on the Southland side that I have very reliable, dedicated owners of the different modules, and that the communication is good between those owners and me. So I think those are some key aspects.
That's great. You really appreciate. Christina, you had during the polls, you noted the offboarding and that we're seeing that the automation there is probably as expected. And consistent client automation is important, and balancing automation with respectful human experiences. You both have mentioned that in this, the personal touch and the technology touch. So can you talk about the offboarding with Anderson and how your use case is handling the automation, both compliance and balancing, what can be very sensitive?
Yep. I see. Well, you know how it goes. Automation works best when it supports the human side of HR rather than replacing it. We're not looking to replace that human part. We're looking to reduce that manual work that doesn't allow, that makes local HR folks sometimes too busy really to focus in on the people. So that's what we're doing here. Our offboarding workflows and Rival handle coordination behind the scenes, including task sequencing, approvals, notification, which allows our HR folks to focus on having the right conversations at the right time. Our workflow covers both voluntary and involuntary separations, along with the various subtypes. This helps, it helps ensures consistency, compliance, while still allowing for flexibility based on the situations. From a systems perspective, Rival is also integrated, like I mentioned before, with our HRIS system. So we're able to process those terminations directly from Rival into our HRIS system. So there's no manual entry. We are building a workflow for our managing director retirements, which is a more complex scenario. It's still in progress, but I think that work reflects how automation can provide structure and clarity while keeping the experience thoughtful and appropriately handled. So I think automation provides structure and timing with offboarding, while the experience itself remains highly personal and human-centered.
Yeah, it really is something very well put all around. Drew, for you, what data can HR teams leverage to prove the value of automation tools and get executive buy-in? I mentioned executive. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier transactional data, so it's the second time I'll say it, but I think that, looking at that transactional data and the volume of it, you got to find a way to attach at least an estimate of time spent per transaction. And once you're able to do that, it can really help you build a business case for automation, right? So once executives see numbers attached to a process or a specific part of a process, time is money too. So if you are able to, you can even use that time to try to attach a dollar amount to it. And then you have a really strong business case. So I think you've got to look at the priorities of your organization. And I think that attaching the business case to the priorities of your organization, putting some numbers behind it. And, if you're still doing things very manually and you don't have a reporting platform to pull that transactional data, this can be more difficult, but still, I would even say it's worth just tracking it yourself. Let's say you have an Excel document or something, and every time you manage a certain task, you update that document with what you did, how long you spent doing it, because at the end of the day, if you want to justify things, you're going to have to show numbers, like concrete numbers.
Mm-hmm. Fact. That's so true. So true. I have one for both of you. And Christina, let me start with you for the back and forth. So even if you already have an existing ATS, HRIS, or ERP, why is layering on an automation tool like Rival critical for increased efficiencies, compliance, and enhanced employee experiences?
Honestly, it's the manual work, right? You have all those systems, but when you have you have everything connected, everything's only entered once. If you don't have everything connected, then you have new hires completing it here in the recruiting system, here in the onboarding system, and then somebody in HR is manually entering that on their end. Having that tool, we are able to get all the compliance forms signed off. Whenever we get audited, for example, I could easily show when somebody completed a task, when it was assigned to them, who did it. I could show all of those things very, very easily with Rival. A couple clicks, I can show you exactly what happened when all of those things. So I think having HRIS systems, we all know, like right now, right, essential. Everyone has the HRIS system, but they aren't designed to manage every workflow that HR owns. Tools like Rival really help bridge that gap by supporting the workflows around all of that data. That automation has greatly reduced manual effort, improved consistency, and straightened governance, which allows our local HR folks, who my team supports, focus on communication and the experience. Whether it's onboarding, offboarding, internal transitions, or newer areas like leave of absence, the automation helps provide structure behind the scenes, so people aren't managing everything through emails and spreadsheets. It just creates clarity, reduces risk, and allows us to spend less time coordinating processes, more time supporting the business and our employees.
Absolutely. Drew, same question.
Can you repeat the question?
I sure can. I sure can. Absolutely. I think maybe yes. Even if you already have an existing ATS, HRIS, or ERP, why is layering an automation tool like Rival critical for increased efficiencies, increased compliance, and enhanced employee experiences?
So speaking from the Southland point of view, we don't even have an HRIS. We just have an ERP right now where our employee data is stored, and it has very limited self-service capabilities. So finding a product suite like Rival where we can, layer on some self-service that's still, reflecting our employee data is, obviously critical, right? Whether it's performance management, whether it's learning, whether it's recruiting or onboarding, and all the other HR processes that could be kind of built out in workflow, without the Rival product, we really wouldn't be able to have much automation at all. So for us, it's incredibly critical to have a suite of products where we can manage those processes, since our ERP doesn't even do it. So.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Good. Christina, a couple other questions I'd like to ask both of you here while we're together. And I'll do both of you on these, as a matter of fact. So if you could automate one HR process to start, and you've had quite a few you've already worked on, is there one, though, that you haven't gotten to yet that you'd want to start on that would have the biggest impact? Or is there one you're planning for that's going to have the biggest impact?
I think for me, the leave of absence workflow is one that we just started. We have all the data and we're getting ready to go. And I think that's going to make a big impact, because while pieces of like leave of absences are frequently, they're done externally, but a lot of it is still done in-house. And we get so many requests for things that, our local HR folks and even outside of HR want for us to do in Rival, and we can't possibly take on all of the projects that people are asking us to do. But so leave of absence was important for us to get through, Our transfers process is also going to be great. Whenever someone is moving offices, or changing anything within their employment, that transfers workflow, we have a form that Rival helped us create that'll go through various signatures based on, which is really awesome. It's going to be based on what the employee level is. So, depending on what their level is, depending on who has to approve, how many approvals they need. So it's really neat now, instead of this form being emailed around, because we're all over the country, now we're going to have Rival that will know, it'll know the position of the person and know how to send that form around. So I think for me, it's going to be a mix between our transfers workflow, which is very close to going live, and our leave of absence workflow, which we're just now starting to build.
That's awesome. I kind of agree. Those are workflows that I think are very differentiating in terms of where Rival can help that we don't necessarily see the HCMs be as effective in. I think it really speaks to the engagement layer we talked about. Drew, what about yourself? If you could automate, is there one process on your wish list that's really going to have the biggest impact? What is that one?
I think the process that has the biggest impact for me is onboarding, just because if you're hiring quickly, it's so critical for people to be able to get the information they need. And it's also such a inflection point, right? Like, you want to drive a consistent employee experience, and you want it to be consistently a positive experience when they come on board, because if it's not, then the integration into the organization is much, much harder. So we want to integrate people quickly. We want them to get up to speed quickly, and we want them to have a good experience while they're doing it. So that's why I think it's probably the biggest impact. And then also the compliance pieces, right? Just making sure they're filling out the right forms, I-9, state tax forms, all that kind of stuff, and making sure that's built into the workflow. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. No doubt. I think it's why many customers associate Rival with onboarding as the main focus of the platform, because it is so effective and so important that it sometimes can eclipse the many other things that we can work on. Appreciate that. And Drew, you mentioned earlier about the importance of having experts trained in the platforms to be there as working partners. Can you talk about the level of technical expertise that and are those experts you're looking for part of the HR business, or are they another role and function? But what's the level of expertise that requires in your estimation? The technical expertise. You're really technical about that.
They're people in the HR organization, so they're not necessarily technology people. And I think that it's not a super high level of technical expertise required. It's every system takes a little bit to learn, but from an admin point of view, I don't think that Rival is complicated, right? I think it's pretty straightforward to train somebody on how to manage it. And then when we run into hiccups or roadblocks, if you have a technical person like me to help you out, then I'll absolutely help you out. If you don't have the luxury of that in your organization, then I think that you could, manage it on your own without too much trouble.
Yeah. How about Christina? Same question. Technical expertise relative to being an administrator or a sort of a user from your point of view in the HR, for the HR person, right? Yeah,
so my team, we are the HRIS team at Anderson. We manage Rival. We have an associate on my team. She's been with us for about a year, and Rival is pretty easy to learn. She is, quickly becoming our Rival go-to person on the team. I don't think anything's overcomplicated, but at the same time, anybody can overcomplicate anything. when I'm talking about our different onboarding events, like, the new firm onboarding, the intern onboarding and regular onboarding, like we originally had that all in one event, and it was gigantic and it was difficult to manage. And with Rival, we contacted Rival, and you guys were easily were able to help us, copy that event and other events, slim it down. So now we have these, much easier to follow workflows for those groups. And so our local HR folks, they're just not usually super technical people. We have a simple guide we put together for them. I think Rival's pretty easy to understand, and we don't, like I said, we get questions all the time. Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? And like we have to turn people away because we only can do so many things at a time.
Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned the number of projects and how much you can even do because there's so many opportunities. Love it. Love it. What is next for HR automation, Christina? Maybe in a bigger picture, not necessarily for Anderson Tax, but maybe beyond. We think about 2026 and opportunities for automation. Is there something beyond it that you're thinking of, or Anderson's thinking of?
That's a hard call because I feel like we already are working on pretty much everything I haven't turned down because, while Rival is great, it's not magical. And because people have such great experiences with Rival, they think, oh, there's all this other stuff. Thinking into 2026, I think it's going to be continuing to refine because, a lot of things were built back in 2017 with AI coming up and new compliance things as we change as a firm and as we grow, right? Like our firm, we are in growth mode. We are growing. So always looking at those workflows, continuing to improve them. Like we just started using our new intern event this month for the interns starting in January. So, and come summer, we are going to have hundreds and hundreds, I don't know what the number is, but probably well over 500 interns starting over the summer. Like Drew was talking, quick turnaround, got to get these guys moving. So for the January folks, we're going to be collecting a lot of feedback, finding out what people like, what they didn't like, not just the hires, but also our local HR folks. And we're going to continue to refine that so that come summer, we have even better workflow for our interns.
That's great. That's great. Scale and speed, I'm hearing, in terms of that.
Yes.
And Drew, what about yourself? Thinking about 2026, are there areas of automation that you're thinking about extending into even further?
Yeah, I think on the Southland side, we're still at the beginning of our HR technology journey. So there's plenty of processes we could work on building out. The thing that I think about a lot, and I think that everybody's talking about, is AI and AI agents. And what is fluff versus what is actually going to help us do our jobs better, and sorting through that, because there's it's the buzzword, everyone out there is saying it, but I don't think people actually understand what they're talking about, a good deal of the time. So I try to think about the real use cases behind how that could help and which platforms are the ones that are, developing those real use cases in a way that we can actually make our jobs easier, right?
Yeah. In fact, do you have any thoughts on introducing the AI component, the automation, as you use the terms together or separately, but without making it feel impersonal, robotic? We've talked about through the onboarding process and the workflows themselves. What about, to your point, where it's incorporating it into the business? Are there thoughts you have there in terms of making it accessible, or that Southland has about making the tools and automation models accessible?
We're really not there yet at this point in terms of AI. But the way I think about it is, it's just, recently become conversational. So let's use that to our advantage. Just a reasonable, a well-configured conversational kind of chatbot type of experience doesn't necessarily feel impersonal. If I ask it a question and it gives me the information I need and I don't need to go email somebody else, then that's a win, right? So it's kind of, if it can take those frontline questions and answer them reliably and in a way that feels more personal than a robot, then I'd call that success. So, and in the onboarding process, it's kind of like a a great place to use that, right? Because in a typical onboarding portal, you're navigating to all these different areas to find information about an organization, right? If you had a chat where you could just ask it and it told you, then that would save everybody time, right? So,
Fact. Yeah, well put. Well put. Christina, thoughts in terms of also the adoption encouragement, making it a little more personal, less robotic? What are your thoughts?
So I think I have mixed feelings on AI. I personally love it, and I use it when I can to save time, right? I mean, for things that I don't need to be doing manually. I think different generations are going to, take information in differently. I think there are some, like the younger generations coming up, prefer to actually have that chatbot conversation, right? But at the same time, having human interaction is important, so we still need to weave that in. Whereas other generations, they don't want to ask the chatbot; they want to talk to their local HR person. And I think that we need to be flexible enough to allow all of that to take place, to allow all those channels of conversation to take place, whatever the employee prefers, because in the end, like, it's the employee that matters.
Yeah, is reflected I think recently there are 5 generations simultaneously in the workforce right now. That's amazing. It's amazing. One more question, I think here. Christina, keep going. Are there any HR processes you think just will never be fully automated, that are just going to be what they're being? Any thoughts there? Or can we get everything?
Oh boy. Well, I'd have to think that the one thing that I can't think of a way you could automate it would be like an employee disciplinary process. I mean, yeah, you could send a format like, the workflow, but I think that, a discipline process requires that human touch, that human interaction. So I think something like that is probably, but it's otherwise, like most things I think can be automated for the most part. And when I'm saying automated, it's really important that I stress that it doesn't take the human out. It just takes like the manual tasks out, the physical work someone is doing. And I think that makes everyone better at their job, able to have better conversations, not bogged down with you have to complete this form. And, instead it's, so you're having a rough time, like more emphasis on the human interaction. And I think that's what automation allows. It allows us to take more time on the human element of our employees.
Yeah. Drew, given where Southland is on its journey, anything that's on the landscape that feels like we'll never automate it, or do you think it could all be gotten?
I mean, I think to a certain extent, offboarding will never be fully automated, just because every situation when someone's leaving a company is different and there's nuances. So while there's pieces of it that you can automate that happen over and over again, from my perspective, there needs to be a human involved kind of hand-holding that process to make sure it doesn't go awry, especially for involuntary separations. But not to say that you couldn't, automate certain pieces of it, but I don't think it'll ever be fully automated. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I can appreciate that. We have some customers that do very robust offboarding, and would wonder, is there anything that we just could get to within that structure? Because to your point, there's just elements of that experience that just maybe need that human part that's just outside of the platform.
Yep.
Very good. I really appreciate both of you here. I could ask you questions for another hour if we had the time. I know we're going to be mindful of. We're really done. Let me go back to our deck so we can reflect on really hearing what we've been learning along the way. So for our audience, really hope that you take what you've learned today and identify your first automation opportunity, mapping where time and compliance points overlap. For example, onboarding forms, state-by-state training requirements, other examples you talked about here. Ask what tasks do your team touch more than twice a week that could run automatically. Audit your current HRIS, HCM, ERP. Where are you still using spreadsheets or email chains to fill gaps? And starting small, pilot one workflow, like a section of onboarding or policy sign-offs or a business unit. Measure the impact and then scale. And start assessing HR automation vendors. Look for flexibility, ease of use, integration capabilities with existing systems, and compliance capabilities as well. We're going to send you our free buyer's guide after this webinar as well. I'll leave you with one final thought before opening a discussion up to any other questions we may have picked up from the audience. But automation isn't a massive 2026 transformation project. It can be a series of smart incremental wins that free your HR team to focus on the strategy and what to do in their professional jobs. And so, being respectful of time otherwise, we'll go ahead and begin the wrap up. We will share the webinar with questions that we talked about here as a follow-up. And remember that everyone will get a link of the recording to today's session as well. Don't hesitate to connect with any of us on LinkedIn or send us an email if you'd like to learn more about automating with Rival. Christina and Drew, thank you both so much for attending today. Your insights were really appreciated. Thank you for being valued customers as well. Very much so. Very, very grateful for you, and to our audience as well for being a part of this and listening into our session. We will be launching a short survey. So before you go, please take a second to fill it out. It is meaningful. We want to make sure these sessions are valuable and we're improving on them. Really, thanks again to you both. Thanks for everyone. Have a great holiday and New Year season. We'll look forward to conversing again.